Chapter 1 Konan 3 years later. The tunnels of the sulfur mine meandered in all directions, tracing the yellow paths of yellow seams deeper and deeper into the sand and rock. Konan had memorized the network years ago, and now its familiarity felt reassuring. The cooler air, stagnant and musty with sulfur as it was also heavier somehow than that of the breezy desert above, comforting like a heavy fur blanketing one's head. The sun, which blazed down without mercy during summer, couldn't reach more than 20 paces beyond the entrance, forcing miners to carry candles in the deeper recesses. Konan stepped carefully through the gloom of others' candles, allowing his feet to wend their way through his memory of this section. It was safer to carry only one's quarry, if possible, allowing a free hand for the undersized pick allocated by the sentries. Konan spun it with a flick of his wrist, its balance and motion perfected even in the dark. Today was a good day. He had pried a near luminescent stone from the earth, one that glittered with flecks of rainbow color in the dim candlelight. He had nearly broken through it, but upon seeing a corner chip off and twinkle at him, had dedicated time to working a large single piece out. It was worth weeks of rations. Tucking it closer into the crook of his left elbow, somewhat hiding it under his piecemeal cloak, Konan hurried toward the entrance. A dark figure emerged from the shadows, blocking the tunnel. "What you got there?" came a voice. Konan paused. He had passed no one, he was sure. This man was alone. The stranger angled his own pick at Konan like a weapon. "Give it to me, whatever it is. Must be a good in the way you was rushing out of here before dusk." "Don't be a fool," Konan thought, steeling himself as the other man stepped forward. He closed the distance enough that they could see each other's faces, then paused. A glimmer of hesitation and recognition crossed his haggard features, but just as quickly he planted his feet. "Can't go no further till you give it up. I'm starving." "Then use that pick to mine," Konan thought, narrowing his eyes. The man swung wildly, and Konan sidestepped him. The tunnel was tight and low, making it awkward to move around. He swung again, swiping his pick at Konan's abdomen, and Konan lurched backward. They circled each other, wary. There was no going back now. This man wanted his prize. Unless... Konan had circled the man, his gemstone clutched tightly to one side and his pick white-knuckled in the other. He was the one nearer to the entrance now. He spun and ran. The man cursed and scrambled after him, and then Konan felt a yank on his flailing coat as the assailant managed to catch it with his pick. The fabric tore. Enough. Konan turned back. The man clearly hadn't expected that, as he stumbled forward with his own momentum, one arm outstretched to the edge of Konan's cloak. His face filled with fear as Konan swung the gemstone like a left hook. The rock hit with a sickening crunch. The man tried to swing his pick once more as Konan fell on top of him. Konan caught the weak attempt and smashed at the clutching fingers until they were bloody and broken. The pick dropped to the ground. Then he struck the man's face once again for good measure. Blood poured from a crooked, ruined nose and jagged cuts on the man's cheek and brow. He snuffled something about mercy through the blood and sinus fluid, and Konan straightened his shoulders. "I don't care whether you live or die," he signed, his face neutral and cold. He adjusted his slipping veil and hood. The man didn't understand him. No one could. As Konan stood, careful not to bash his own skull against the sharp rock of the uneven ceiling, the man clutched his broken hand to his chest and sobbed. "Can't dig nothin'. Can't do nothin'." He snorted and spat a bloody mess onto the ground. "Can't get no rations. I'm gonna die here." He continued moaning to himself, and Konan ignored him. After retrieving both picks to ensure the man didn't come after him again, he resumed his departure, his gemstone sequestered by his side. Konan wound his way up the tunnel, occasionally passing a small candle set on a jutting rock, adhered by its own wax and burning to its eventual death. He refocused on regaining control of his fluttering heartbeat, inhaling the blessedly cool air in a calm, even rhythm. Other miners glanced at him with vacant, hopeless eyes as he passed, then returned to their own labors. The closer he got to the entrance, the more there were, tapping mindlessly away at the deposits, trying to earn enough to get by. Most of them would receive only a portion of the rations gained, as they were obligated to give tribute to whichever gang leader they followed. Konan stopped at the entrance and handed both picks to a sentry. The other sentry, an older man with sunburnt skin and a weary expression, scanned him for hidden weapons. His eyes widened as they caught on the bloodied stone, and his face twisted into a sour grimace. "By the fucking light, boy," he snarled. "Not again." Konan stared down at him, the image of calm, his eyes dead. It was strange how the old-timers still called him boy. The first sentry raised both picks in question. "We gotta go get a body, sir?" He glanced at the older sentry for confirmation, who looked at Konan. Konan shook his head, and the older man's scowl softened slightly. "Good. Lot of fucking work that'd be. Fucking molehill in there. Stinks to the nether gate. You do me a favor, boy?" Konan didn't acknowledge, only listened, and the younger sentry leaned over and asked his superior if Konan was dumb. The man ignored him and continued. "You kill someone deep in. At least carry him out so someone finds him. Damn rotten down there already." With a slow nod, Konan turned away. Why had he defended himself? In the heat of any altercation, and there were many, his instinct was to fight, to operate with sheer white rage that filled his vision and warmed his core, to battle against whatever foe until that foe diminished or died. But why? Had he allowed that man to take his life and his gemstone, perhaps Konan would be at peace. Perhaps he would find something better on the other side of the gates, wherever it was that Iselin had gone. Regret filled him as he recalled the bloody pulp of the man's cheek and nose. He should have allowed the assailant to end it, this miserable, pointless life. He trudged along the fortress wall and watched the sun sink behind the distant horizon. Dusk had arrived. With the wall on one side and the sea of shanties on the other, Konan could now walk safely to the well and food window. It was the best watched place in the camp, guarded by 2 nearby towers. Soldiers could pour from the adjacent iron-spiked gate if necessary, although that was infrequent enough. They seemed to better enjoy picking the rare troublemakers off with arrows from up high. Konan knew they kept score amongst themselves, small numbers that carried weight in the monotony of guarding the mines. After rinsing his bloodied, dusty hands, he cupped tepid fresh water into his mouth from the well. The stone pool built against the wall was fed by a small fountain, circulating enough to rinse away blood, urine, or whatever else soaked one's body and clothes. It was the only water available in Tahai mines, a sure way to control the prisoners. Drawn from deep underground into a well inside the fort, the water was pumped through aqueducts onto the salt flats, the other half of Tahai Mine's operations, and to here, the drinking well. With a surreptitious glance around, Konan shuffled his empty water skein from under his cloak. Skeins were rarities, and he had fashioned this one from the limited leather he had encountered over the years. He had sewn it with a needle, another rarity obtained only because the middle-aged woman at the food window, a Shayalese named Tass, had known him when he was young. She leaned out the food window now and grinned at him with yellow teeth. "What you got today, boy?" Konan secured his full water skein to his belt and hid it with his cloak, then carried the stone to the exchange window. He was surprised to see a younger woman peering around her, first with a semblance of curiosity, though it was quickly replaced by fear and disgust. He stood back slightly, allowing them to appraise his offering. Tass gestured at the younger woman. "Come now, he ain't one to be afraid of. I know he looks it, but he's fine. Look at this stone now, and light that lamp." The younger woman grimaced with distaste at Konan and at the blood-grimed stone, then leaned forward to help. Tass gave her a prim look of approval. "This here's Donna. New girl, you know. She don't know you yet, but she'll have to get used to you and the rest." Konan didn't respond, but he was aware of other miners making their way from the far east end. He wished the woman would hurry so he could leave. Things got more dangerous in the dark, and he preferred to be back in his shanty, alone. "See here, Donna, he's brought us an entire sunstone," the older woman continued, pulling out a tiny pick and inspecting different sides of the rock. She seemed unaware of the blood, entranced by the rainbow sparkle showing beneath the gray stone in each place she tapped. "This here's worth weeks of rations." 2 maximum, he guessed, but she pushed 3 weeks' worth through the window with a wink. "Good work, boy." Donna mumbled something and flinched as Konan reached for the sack of food. She threw a dubious look at the older woman. Her reaction was normal. All the servants who worked the food window were frightened of the prisoners, as they should have been. With a wary look around, Konan saw the other miners approaching and hurried away, his rations held close. As he trudged off, he heard the other miners' lewd comments and laughter. They were teasing Donna. He clenched his jaw at the rough words, which seemed to be getting rougher as he made distance. Then he heard a yelp, and he looked back. Donna was halfway out the window, her reed-thin body too easy to manipulate. One of the men was covering her mouth, and they both yanked at her while Tass yanked back with a shrill curse. Her shouts were probably loud in her own ears, but they didn't carry out the food window very effectively, and a glance at the guard towers told Konan no one was really paying much attention. In moments, Konan had shoved one of the men into the wall as hard as he could and began punching him, first a hook to the face and then a strike to the gut. The man doubled over with a pain-filled squawk, but then the second man pushed Konan from behind. He threw an elbow back, hard. It connected with the second man's face, and he flew toward the well. Konan returned to the first. His knuckles would bruise. Again. So he grabbed a stone from the food window and used it instead, smashing it into the man's face over and over and over. The man slumped after a while and sank all the way to the ground, and still Konan beat him until his face was a mass of blood and shattered bone and burst eyeball. When his rage subsided, Konan stood and looked around, nostrils flaring as he regained control. Donna sat in the sand, wide-eyed. Then she scrambled back through the window and disappeared with a terrified sob. Konan placed the stone back on the windowsill without making a sound. The older woman took it with a grim nod. "Thank you, boy. Hopefully she'll learn quick. Not all of them are like you." Tass leaned out and examined the mess. Konan followed her gaze, which stopped first on the pulpy face of the man who was leaned up against the wall, then moved to the one still lying in the well. "Move him, would you? Don't want the water sickened. The guards will get him moved all the way out in the morning, when it's light." She slid the iron shutter down to bar the window, then closed the inner wooden doors as well, leaving Konan with only the remnant of orange light from the sunset. Konan did as she asked, wondering at himself again. Why did he keep living when it was so easy to die? But this time he had an answer. Donna. He wouldn't have interacted with those men at all had she not been grabbed and pulled through. He shook his head and heard a distant laugh. Looking up into the failing light of the nearest tower, he saw one of the soldiers hold up a hand to him, with 2 fingers showing. The others had arrows nocked, but their bows were lowered. 2. The soldiers burst out laughing again. Konan had a wall score now.